not nearly cold enough for mine. So if I want mine, I would have cooked myself. So, all right. So I got everything all set up. We'll go ahead and get the class started. All right. So today we'll talk about software and also finish up some of the topics that we started off the other day. Are there any more questions about cameras? About the physical or the specifications of cameras? How to select one? No questions?
When were you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, it was something.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, when are you putting up the assignment you were talking about?
I have not yet put it out yet, so it's still not done.
They're fine.
Okay. All right. Because I think I still have not finished all the topics yet, so we'll go ahead and finish up some of those. Never for this side. All right. So if I remember correctly, last time we were working on how to evaluate a camera, and we worked our way down the list. We covered sensors, we covered image processor, batteries, flash, continuous auxiliary light, hot shoe, waterproof, variability, and the last point was basically just think about what you want to do with your camera, and then you can prioritize what features are important. Always start with what you want to do with the camera first, and not just go to the store and go, oh, this camera looks kind of cool. Sometimes I do that too, but I don't buy based on that type of evaluation. Are there any questions about this slide? Because we are done with this slide already at this point, so we're just going to move forward. I typed up two additional pieces. One is called maximum aperture, because I think this is important of a topic that it deserves its own page. So this is one page that is dedicated only to maximum aperture and why you want, or you might want to have a larger maximum aperture, and also the nomenclature, what it really means when they use the numbers like f over something. So that's a new slide that I typed up. It's not really long. It's really kind of short and not very technical, so you should read that when you have time. Another one that I typed up is what is ASA, and this one is kind of important because it helps you evaluate a camera based on its low light sensitivities. In other words, if you want to take pictures with existing light without using a flash, or if you want to stop action, like in a ball game, you don't want to see the players all blurred up because they're moving when you take the picture, ASA becomes an important topic. The tricky part about ASA is a camera can rate itself to be ASA, to have ASA 1600. The question is how fuzzy or how grainy is the picture at ASA 1600? That's the question. And this one also has an explanation of why a larger sensor is going to have less noise, so you end up with much better quality pictures at a higher film speed or higher sensitivity. So this is a kind of a follow-up of our discussion on Monday, so that I explained these things in a little bit more details, and so that it will help you evaluate a camera better with this information. So the last part you can see has to do with image sensor size, and I explained why a small sensor like a 1/3 inch sensor compared to a APC-S sensor. The larger sensor, everything else being the same, the larger sensor is going to have 1/10 of the noise of the smaller sensor. So you can definitely tell in a picture, at 1600, ASA 1600, you can definitely tell, oh, this picture is kind of grainy, and this picture is really nice, because one has 1/10 of the noise of the other one. Are we doing okay so far? If you want to understand the concept of noise, kind of imagine back in the old days when we still have the analog TVs, when you have poor reception, you have a lot of grain on your TV, like snowflakes, or just grain. It's the same thing with digital cameras. When we talk about noise, it's basically those little speckles, that's just all over the screen. So we are done with these topics, and then we are going to move on to the different categories of cameras. Now this is just a rough categorization. In other words, it's not really quite, chopped up into portions like this, but for the most part, they are, they can be categorized into these things. The first category of cameras is called a point and shoot camera. Most cameras belong to this category. Even this one, I would still call this one, a point and shoot camera, because even though it has other modes of operation, it fits all the requirements, almost all of these requirements except for one, of a point and shoot camera. So we'll go through all these, criteria for a point and shoot camera. It has no real viewfinder. You can see that right here it has a little viewfinder port, but it's not real, because inside that viewfinder is a digital image. So it's just a smaller version of the larger screen. Can anyone imagine why that might be useful?
If your screen is broken.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
If your screen is broken.
If your screen is broken,
Or if it's bright out.
or it's bright out, exactly. Or if you want to save power. It's amazing how much power or how much energy of the battery is actually used to power up the LCD screen or the backlight of the LCD screen. Even with my phone, my phone has an OLED, organic light emitting diode, which is supposed to be more efficient than a plain LCD. I looked up, how battery is drained during the day. Half the energy is actually on the display itself. Okay, the communication part with the cell tower and everything else is the other half. So that means this big screen, the bigger the screen, the more power it will consume. And when you look at the viewfinder, it's really small. So to power up the backlight of the viewfinder doesn't take that much energy, and that's why you can save power. So you can you can take more pictures in the case of a camera.
How do you turn off the big screen then if you change the...
It depends on the brand. In this case, I have a little switch here that can let me switch between the viewfinder and the actual screen. But it depends on the brand. Most brands do not have a viewfinder anymore because most consumers do not need a viewfinder anymore. Another reason why you might want to consider a viewfinder is when you have eyes like mine. I have good eyesight, but I need correction. And on top of that, because my lens is, as you age, your lens will become less flexible, which means even though you might have 20/20 vision after correction, you cannot change focus dynamically just like that, like when we're younger. Okay, so when you walk around, normally your eye will be focused to close to infinity, but when you look at the screen like that, it's much closer. I have bifocal lens, so it helps a little bit, but it's still kind of troublesome to have to look at the lens like this because I have to go through the lower portion, and then I have to look at distant objects using the top portion. But when I use the viewfinder, it has a focal distance of infinity as well. So if I put it up just like this, it's already in focus. And that's the other reason why you might want to consider an either optical or electronic viewfinder, is when you cannot change your focus nearly as quickly as you could before. So it can be a real good feature sometimes, but since most manufacturers want to save their cost, they don't want to waste money on anything that people don't use. It's basically all gone now except for a few models. The second point is no interchangeable lenses. This one has a fixed lens, even though it looks like it's interchangeable, it's not. It has a built-in flash. All point and shoot cameras have a built-in flash. Very small form factor. My camera does not fit this particular requirement. Small image sensor. It still is pretty small. I think it's 1/2.3 inches, which is still considered kind of small. Not much manual override control. That really does not apply to this camera because I can actually switch it to manual mode. Then I can control both the aperture and the shutter speed. But most point and shoot cameras do not give you that option. Can anyone guess why they don't want to give you that option?
More expensive.
No, it doesn't make it any more expensive because everything is now electronic. So the camera itself needs to control those properties anyway. So giving you the control through the touch screen or whatever is really just software work, which is not a whole lot of money. The reason why they don't want to give you that option is, one, they don't want the tech support calls. Okay, I try to take a picture, it's not the way it's supposed to be. How should I do it? Okay, well, you kind of need to buy a book on photography first, and it's the 200-page book. Okay, or go to the library and check out one. Or the manufacturer don't want people to complain about the camera not taking good pictures, and so the camera gets bad reviews. So they wanted to just use the auto mode. We are taking care of everything for you. Okay, but this one is kind of intended for prosumer or professional / consumer market. So it does have full control over the aperture and also the shutter speed. Few has external lighting connectivity, and that's absolutely true. Even this one does not have a hot shoe. So there's no way for me to attach it to an external flash, except for what we call an optical slave. An optical slave flash is basically just, it will pop when this flashlight pops itself. So it mirrors. So you can always get one, for your point and shoot camera like that. But the question is, when you do get one external flash like that, it doesn't synchronize with the internal flash or the exposure control. So the picture may get overexposed or underexposed depending on how the sensor works it out with the external flash. So you have to be careful when you use external flash with everything in auto mode. Many can record videos, and that's one of the points that I will mention again later on, because who needs a video camera or a camcorder anymore? This camera can take video footages at up to 1080p, which is the maximum high definition resolution. So there's really not a whole lot of need for me to get a dedicated camcorder anymore, except for one reason. We'll talk about that too. Many have powered zooms. I cannot imagine anything more than $100 without powered zoom. Okay, if you get one for about $20, $30, maybe it doesn't have any zoom capability. But anything at a price point of more than $100 will have variable focal length, which we also call zoom. The next category is called digital SLR, or single lens reflex. This is the opposite of point and shoot. Basically a digital single lens reflex camera. Let me go take a look at one right now. We can go to Amazon, and I used the T3i last time, so we'll go ahead and use the T3i again. Yes?
Did you get my message?
I was teaching the class, I had to turn it off.
Oh,
what happened?
LWT's down right now.
It is down?
I just went on there and it rebooted and it's doing something weird and I don't know what it is, so I just want to let you know.
Okay.
Leslie was trying to do something on there, she called me and I went and checked and it's down right now, so whenever you get a chance to look at it.
Okay, is it checking
It's doing some kind of maintenance thing, it's asking for the root password, but I tried the one that you said and it didn't work, it wouldn't take it.
It's the same root password as power.
That's what I thought. Maybe I did it wrong, I'll go check again.
Okay,
So
thanks.
it's doing some kind of manual maybe.
Okay, all right. That's my other duty of server administration. So sometimes it conflicts with this job. Okay, this is the T3i, which is a kind of modern consumer. I would call this a consumer type single lens reflex camera. And the name single lens reflex has a meaning already, and it's a really big part of what a SLR is. You can go to websites like Wikipedia and get a better understanding of what SLR stands for, single lens reflex camera. And I just want to scroll to a picture right here. This is a side view, kind of like an internal view of a single lens reflex camera. And what you can see here is this part here, this diagonal line, represents a mirror. And this is what we call a pentamirror. Basically it's just a prism, but it serves the purpose of a mirror. So when light comes in through the lens, it will first hit the mirror, and it bounces up, and then use these, use the reflective surface of the prism, and then it will bounce all the way to the viewfinder. Okay. When you take a picture, this mirror has to flip up first, so that's why we have a little arrow here. The mirror will have to flip up so that the light can go through instead of being bounced off through the mirror. And then the shutter is right here. So the shutter is about the same size as the image sensor itself, and it's a curtain shutter, which means it has two components. It will slide a black thing across the screen, with an opening, so you can control the exposure time, through the length of opening the length of time of the opening will control the exposure time. Okay, but why do we care about this particular feature? This is what we call an optical viewfinder. Not only is it optical, it actually sees exactly what will be recorded on the image sensor. Now, does anyone know why this is important? It's not important in most cases, but when you take pictures of macro stuff, this is really important. When you want to take pictures that are of things that are really close to you, this is an important feature. If you want to do manual focus, this is an important feature because it is an optical viewfinder. In other words, if you have really good eyes, you can actually do the focusing yourself and be able to focus on any part of the picture instead of only at places where the camera thinks is important. Am I making any points here? Okay. But because of this thing, and also the mirror, and also the big shutter at the back of the entire camera, SLRs cannot be too small. This is pretty much as small as it can get, because the top part here, when you look at the side view, I'm not sure whether it has a side view or not. Nope, doesn't have a side view. But when you look at the side view, this part here is the penta mirror. They try to make this as small as possible. It still takes up quite a bit of space. And then the shutter itself is also kind of big. It takes a lot of room at the back of the camera. And that's why single lens reflex cameras cannot be really too small. I think the smallest they can get is probably about this size. They cannot make it any smaller. There's no way to make it any smaller. The nice part of a single lens reflex camera, in this case a digital one, is they all have optical viewfinders. Most of these cameras can now switch between the optical viewfinder and also the LCD screen. It's only recently, over the past 2 years, that they have started to use the viewfinder for from 2 years ago, they have started to use the LCD for viewfinding purposes. Before, it's only for reviewing pictures that you have taken and for control purposes. And that's because if you look at this picture here, if you want to use the viewfinder, if you want to use the LCD for viewfinding purposes, this mirror has to go up. In other words, you can either use the LCD or the viewfinder, but not both at the same time. They all have a mirror, and that's why you hear that clicking sound when a professional photographer takes pictures. You can always hear that very distinct sound, and that's because the mirror has to flip up, and the shutter also makes its own noise. This camera is completely silent. I can take a picture of the class right now, and you can basically evaluate how noisy it is. I didn't bring my SLR today, so I could not compare that. Okay, so let me switch to just the program mode here. I'm just going to take a picture of the class. Did you hear anything?
No.
Yep. I heard like a very small click, and that was it. But if I had a single lens reflex camera, you would have heard mechanical noises. That's why in a wedding, something like this is actually even more appropriate than a single lens reflex camera, because this one is completely silent, whereas a SLR is still kind of noisy. In the old days when we had film, a SLR is even noisier because most of those have electrical film winding mechanisms. So on top of the clicking sound, you have the motor turning the film mechanism, so you will hear and then to advance the film. So that means it's very distracting in the wedding. Single lens reflex cameras now most have what we call a live view feature, which means the main LCD can also be used as a viewfinder. But older ones, anything older than maybe 2 years old, do not have that feature. It's a fairly new feature. Most can also record videos. Once again, this is a new feature. Most digital single lens reflex cameras do not have the capability of recording videos 2 years ago, but now they all do it. Most lenses only have manual zoom. Now focusing is automatic, but the zooming part is manual, which means you have to physically twist the ring to change the the zoom ratio, or some zooms are push-pull and some are twist, but you will have to do it. And my personal experience is I cannot do it smooth enough that it doesn't create any jerks in the actual recording. So that's a big minus for single lens reflex cameras for recording video. They all have large image sensor, and this is one of the best features of a digital single lens reflex camera is they have superior noise and sensitivity characteristics. For instance, if you want to take pictures of dancing, especially if it's indoor using artificial light, you will get much better results with a digital single lens reflex camera like the $600 one that I showed. You will have much better results with that than any point and shoot camera. You can get a $300 or $400 point and shoot camera and it still won't be able to do it. But the absolutely best feature of a digital single lens reflex camera is you have a variety of lens selection. In other words, if you like to take architecture pictures, you can get what we call a tilt shift lens, which is a very specialized lens, so they can correct for the parallax and also all sorts of distortion when you take pictures of cathedrals or just any type of architecture. If you like to take pictures of people, like portraiture, you can get what we call a telephoto lens, a wide aperture telephoto lens, so you can achieve that blur background, but people in front is really sharp kind of effect. If you like landscape, you go hiking, you like to take landscape pictures, you can get either a fish lens or you can get a wide angle lens, so you can include a lot more landscape than a point and shoot camera. And if you think, oh, I have a 24mm lens, it's only mediocre, now I have a bunch of money, I can afford a better lens, guess what? You can get a really nice 24mm lens. With a digital single lens reflex setup, you can choose what lens you want to use according to how much money you're willing to pay and also according to your needs. With a point and shoot setup, you don't get a choice. There's no choice whatsoever. Once you buy the camera, whatever lens is on it is what you have. You can no longer change it, extend it, or modify it. This new category is called, there are different names for that. Some people call it mirrorless interchangeable lens system. It's basically about the same as digital single lens reflex cameras, but without the mirror. And I can show you what it looks like. We can go to Costco for this. Now you guys know exactly where I go to shop. So let's look up electronics. They changed the website a little bit, so it's a little bit different to look up stuff now. Compact system cameras. There we go. So these are all within that system. I'll just pick one randomly. I'll just pick the Nikon V1, and you can see that it's a bit smaller compared to a digital single lens reflex camera. It still has an interchangeable lens and a good size image sensor. So it seems to combine the nice features of a digital single lens reflex camera and also a compact camera. So if we compare the specifications, look at the specifications here, you can see the depth of the camera itself is only 1.7 inches. When you look at something like this, it is considerably bigger. Let me see if I can find the specs for that. Nope, it doesn't show the actual specs, but it's really quite a bit bigger. The price, on the other hand, is not that much lower when you get a compact camera system bundle. With this bundle, what do you get? You get one lens. This is what we call a normal lens, which is a just a low-end zoom lens. You get a 32 gigabyte flash card. You get a viewfinder, 10 frames per second, which is good. That's a really nice feature. But it's not really that much less expensive compared to the T3i. When you compare this camera to the T3i, let me just show them side by side here. The T3i, let me scroll all the way to the top so we can look at the price here. It's $614. This one is $600. So you're saving $15. That's it. And then you can compare the rest of the specifications. Okay, the most important part is how big is the sensor, and it's not even shown here, I don't think. Nope, they do not show it there. It does say that it has low light capability, but it doesn't really show you exactly how big is the sensor. So I don't know. I mean, this is kind of hard to say. It's a toss-up. Okay, which one is a better option? I think it's a toss-up. If you just want the slightly smaller size, the other one, which is called a compact camera system, is slightly better. But personally, I would just go for the single lens reflex, because the availability of lenses for the other one is really limited, because it has just been out for a few years. People do not know whether it will gain popularity or not. But for something like this, the lens system used by this particular camera has been in existence for the past 20-something years. In other words, there are tons of lenses available right now for this type of system, whereas with this, you have to buy every single lens brand new. There is no used lens market for something like this because it is so new. So it all depends. I mean, if the standard lens is good enough for you, well, then I have another question for you. Why don't you go for a point and shoot camera? Except for the low lighting sensitivity, this type of system doesn't offer you any advantage. Are you guys seeing the point? So this is kind of like, this type of camera, I think, is between a rock and a hard place, because on the top it has digital single lens reflex cameras, which will continue to exist. Professionals will not go after these types of cameras because of the lack of a optical viewfinder. At the same time, at the low end, you have the point and shoot cameras, kind of stepping up, pushing, so it's being squished in the middle. And the advantage that it's offering, I think, is not enough to justify its existence.
So what camera would you say would be good for family pictures and like sports events and like plays? Like, how like plays for little kids, they normally darken it out besides the kids. Would you say the point and shoot camera would be okay for that too, or?
It depends on, where, okay, it depends on a few things. If size is really important to you, like if you want to be able to put the camera into a purse or something like that, then you have no choice but to go for point and shoots. If size is not a big deal, you can carry a camera bag with you, then you can either go for something like this or a DSLR, a digital single lens reflex. If you want to get specialized lenses, okay, like special ones for just taking portraiture, or be able to afford, okay, when you first start up, you may not have all the money that I want to buy this lens and that lens, but over time you basically sell what you have and buy something else, either used or brand new. If you want to have that ability, I would say this is not as good as a DSLR, because it doesn't have as many lenses in circulation already at this point. For taking family pictures, I have a camera like this. I have the T2i, and I pair that up with a third-party lens. It's a Sigma lens. It's not made by Canon, but it does a really good job. The image stabilization works really good. It has a wide aperture, f2.8, which is a pretty good aperture. And it's only for a fraction of the cost of a real Canon lens. And I take pictures without the flash all the time.
And it does good in bad lighting?
It depends on what you call bad lighting. Just normal indoor lighting is fine. Yeah. Part of that depends on your hands too. If you have steady hands, it really helps. But if you have kids running in low light, then it doesn't matter how good your hands are, because you have to crank up the ASA setting. I take pictures at ASA 1600 all the time with my digital single lens reflex camera with good results. With this one, I can push it to 1600, but it will be so noisy, it's not really acceptable at that sensitivity. So if you want something that's reasonably good and has expansion capability, you're still looking at about $600 brand new, but you can always consider used items. Any questions at this point? New questions? All right, let's move on. So in this case, it has good noise and sensitivity characteristics because the sensor is still relatively large. Has a smaller camera body, however, because the lens is not a part of the body, it's not nearly as compact as a point and shoot. So if you really want a small, I want to fit it in my pocket type, this system doesn't fit that requirement either. All can capture video, and they all have powered zoom because they're redesigned from the ground up. So most of these have powered zooms. Most have external flash capability, either wireless or using the hot shoe, so that's good. This part here, you can see that it's not really true anymore. It is not priced between point and shoot and digital single lens reflex because this is a single lens reflex with one lens included, and this is a compact system with one lens included, and the price is only off by $15, and that's basically insignificant. Are there any questions about this? No questions? Okay. Now, how do you know which one has better performance? I would just go to Amazon, or go to some other websites and read the reviews written by other people. In other words, I would just go here, right click, just select, Nikon 1V1, right click, and then search Google for that particular thing, and you can see that Amazon is also selling it, and the overall review is not very favorable. So you can see this one with a lens setup. Oh, this one has two lenses. Sorry, I take it back. The one lens setup is the 10 to 30 millimeter. From the lens itself, this is a 10 to 30 millimeter lens. I can tell you that the sensor of this camera is actually quite a bit smaller compared to the single lens reflex camera. Because when you look at the single lens reflex camera, which is this one here, the kit lens that comes with it is a 18 to 55 millimeter, so the ratio is about the same. When you look at this one, it's only 10 to 30 millimeters. This is called a kit lens, KIT kit lens, and it's usually covering what we call a slight wide angle to what we call a slight telephoto angle. And you can tell that the ratio is about 10 for this particular lens is about 18 for the other one. So you can probably figure out the sizes of the image sensor is off by the same ratio. And that's why I think this camera would not have the same low light performance as the Canon. But it costs you the same money. It's the same price, basically. So I think that's a major factor. And you can also see that when you buy this from Amazon, it's actually considerably less expensive compared to the Costco price. You can also see from the customer reviews, okay, from 47 customer reviews, it has 4 stars out of 5, which is not bad. But when you look at the Canon, out of 434 customer reviews, you can see how the reviews distribute. This one has mostly in the 5-star range, just a little bit in the 4-star range, and very tiny little bits of the 1, 2, and 3 stars. The other one is kind of more even spread. You can see that most people think it's all right, but it's not as good as the full single lens reflex. So this is a research tool. I use this as a research tool to evaluate products. And guess what? What do you think I click first? When you have 400 and something reviews, it's kind of hard to read through all of the reviews, right? So what do you think I should do first?
The lowest one.
Yep, exactly. I always read the lowest ones first to see what they have to complain about. Okay, when they complain about Drain's battery went off, Well, you know what? That's kind of odd. Maybe it has a faulty battery. Garbage flash. Okay, the built-in flash cannot be raised to turn the camera off and on again. This happens every time. This can be operator error because a lot of these cameras do not have a manual switch to pop up the flash. A lot of times it depends on the programming, or the settings. If you set the camera to say turn the flash off, it will turn it off. It won't pop it up and start using the flash. So I'm not quite sure whether this is a problem with the camera itself or operator error. So that's why I always read the lowest rating first to see what people have to what the major complaints are, and then I will evaluate whether it's really important to me or not. Let's move on to camcorders. In the old days, camcorders are camcorders because they use tapes. Okay, so in the old days, cameras is one thing. Still cameras, digital single lens reflex or point and shoot cameras, they use film, and then camcorders use some sort of tape, 8mm tape or VHS-C or some other formats of tape. But these days, do they still use tapes? You walk into Fry's, you can probably still buy tape, 8mm tape, but the Fry's associate will have to spend some time to look for it, right? So today, camcorders do not use tapes anymore. For a certain amount of time, they were using hard drives, smaller, internal hard drives, and they have even moved away from the internal hard drives, and now they're all using solid state memory, just like SD cards and everything else that we use for all the other devices. So there's no real difference anymore. And most camcorders, because they don't use tapes anymore, they can also take pictures, still pictures. But there are major differences between a camcorder and a camera. A camcorder is designed so that most of the time you would use it to capture video, and because of that, it has different ergonomics. Now, I can just show a little comparison here. If I were to use this camera for video capturing purposes, I don't have a chance to hold it like a camcorder, which is kind of more like this. I still have to hold it more like a traditional camera. Which position do you think is more stable? The camcorder position is more stable with one hand. Okay, assuming you only want to use one hand, this is a much better hand position compared to this. This is much better when you use both hands. But this is only good when you're only using one hand. So a camcorder definitely has the ergonomic advantage over a traditional camera when you want to take videos using only one hand. Okay. When was the last time you tried to record a child's performance and your hand starts to strain and go like, oh, I cannot do this anymore? I do it every year. Okay. So you end up using a tripod anyway. So whether you're hand holding it or not, it's not a major big factor. The only time you want to hand hold it is when you have a trip, okay, and then you just want to take like a 2-minute clip of something. Yes, then it makes sense that you might want to have a camcorder. The camcorders also have one big disadvantage. They usually have really small image sensors, which means the low light sensitivity is not good, and they also have a lower resolution at the same time. So that to me is a big deal, because that means if I use a camcorder to take still pictures, the still pictures would not be of any good quality. Most of these now have internal or built-in LED lights for low light situations. When you turn on the built-in LEDs, the pictures really don't look good anymore. They have LCD displays. Okay, very few have eyepieces anymore. The eyepiece is basically the viewfinder. Most camcorders will only give you a flip up screen or flip out screen, and you use that to take pictures. Go ahead.
What does the LED stand for?
LED stands for light emitting diode, and LCD stands for liquid crystal display. The differences, you want to know the differences, right?
Yes.
Okay. The difference is LED is good for illumination purposes, like lighting up something. And LCD is good for display purposes. When you have an image to display, then you want it's usually LCD. When you want to light up something like a flashlight, it is LED. The interesting part is LED is also used as a backlight mechanism of LCD. So sometimes they will say this LCD has a backlight of LED. Yep, that's it. Yep, that's LED. And I'm gonna pass the row sheet so that I know who's here. So the bottom line here is camcorders are excellent for what they're intended for, which is single-handed handheld recording. To me, that's the only thing they excel these days. Okay, not so great for still picture taking because the sensor has limited resolution and small size. And typically the zoom lenses have a long range of focal length, and that's one of the big advantage too. But remember, this camera has a 30 times zoom as well. So in other words, this camera is still okay, in terms of zoom ratio compared to a camcorder. If you are a professional, the professional versions of camcorders are considerably better than the consumer type, and it's a completely different ball of game. It's comparing apples to oranges. All right. Are there any questions about camcorders? Is anyone in the market for a camcorder? Okay. So are you guys still considering a dedicated camcorder, or are you now kind of thinking about maybe using a camera that can also take video clips? You might need to try it out, just to see, especially the zoom portion, because a digital camera still has, probably noisier zoom, mechanisms, because they're never really quote unquote intended for video capturing. So when you zoom in and zoom out, there may be more mechanical noise, whereas camcorders have near silent, zooming capabilities. But other than that, paying more for a separate device just for video taking is a little bit kind of redundant to me. Go ahead.
So, how come most camcorders are designed to take only videos?
They're not designed, well, they used to take only video they can only take videos because they're tape devices. In other words, you have a 8mm tape inside the camcorder, and because a tape can only run in one direction, and you cannot really just rewind it quickly and run it through again, you cannot use it to take still pictures easily. But these days, because they're all using just SD cards, there's no tape to rewind, there's no tape to wind. So a camcorder is basically a camera but with capabilities to take video and also shape differently so that you can use one hand to take video clips. Okay. I can show you a picture of a typical camcorder. Once again, we can just go to Amazon.
Oh, so like, when you take a video and then when you look at it, you pause at a certain spot and then you could take that image and put it as a picture?
No, some camcorders give you two buttons. So one button to start to record the motion picture, and then it has a separate button to take still pictures while it is recording the video. And the still picture has a higher resolution. Typically gives you a better resolution, maybe 4 or 5 megapixels, whereas even in HD, it's only 2 megapixels. So you're better off with the ability to take still pictures while recording video than taking a frame out of the video to become your still picture. So I'm taking a look at a typical consumer type of camcorder. You can see how the shape is different. It has a very traditional camcorder shape, which means it is intended to be held like this with one hand, okay, with stability. The price is not bad. I mean, it's $200. However, when you look at the zoom, it claims to have 70x, which means 70 times zoom. But sometimes, that may include a digital zoom, which is totally useless. Has a touch screen, so you can control, control properties using the touch screen. And okay, let's see here. It has 60 times, optical zoom, which is really good. Now, it looks really good on paper, having a 60 times zoom, but in practice, it's useless. Why do you think in practice it is useless? Let's say you're a detective, right? You need to follow somebody and take pictures of that somebody doing something. Go ahead.
Because unless you have it on a tripod, your hand's not going to be steady enough when it's zoomed that much in.
Yeah, that's one big reason. Okay, reason number one why a 60 times zoom is typically useless is your hand will shake so much that the recorded video would be useless because it's all just shaking, right? But there's another reason. The other reason has to do with the aperture of the lens. Okay, remember, not remember because I just typed it up yesterday, but the aperture is a ratio. Okay, so when we look at the number of an aperture, it's called f divided by something. In this case, f2.8 is actually a really good lens. This is a wide aperture for any type of lens. But this is a ratio of the focal length. The focal length is basically what the zoom is all about. Okay, so when you have a 24 millimeter lens, 22 millimeter divided by 2.8 is a particular number, and that's the opening of the lens itself. When you have 240 millimeter divided by 2.8, this is a much bigger opening, but it gives you the same amount of light into the camera body. When you have even more, when you have a 2400 millimeter lens, it's even a bigger opening. So that means with this particular camcorder, which claims to have a 30 times or 60 times zoom, not even 30, it's 60 times zoom. By the time you zoom all the way up to the maximum telephoto setting, there's so little light coming through the lens that you need the subject to be brightly lit under ideal situation to even record anything useful. Because there's so little light coming through at the extreme telephoto lens setting, it's practically useless. So they can claim all they want, what is the maximum zoom ratio, but the question is, can you even use it at that zoom ratio? Steady shot image stabilization, that's actually on every camera now, so it's not really a unique feature anymore. Intelligent auto, it's basically the image processor, trying to decide, how to do the right exposure. Face detection, that's also in most point and shoot camera these days. Built-in LED video light, this is a kind of a good feature that may not be in a smaller or a cheaper camera. Built-in USB cable for file transfer and charge. Personally, I would still pop the SD card out and use a card reader to transfer the files. And it has included software for this sort of thing. It doesn't offer that much differences. Doesn't offer that much features so that I would consider a separate device just for recording video. There any questions at this point? No questions? Okay. If you have time and you're in the market to buy a camcorder, I would definitely try to go to a store and try it out and see whether the handling and everything else on the camera justifies an extra piece of hardware compared to a digital camera. And then we also have mobile devices, your cell phones. How many people have a cell phone that has the ability to record at least still pictures? All of us, okay? And that's the other reason why the camera segment is getting pushed, because it's also being pushed by your cell phones. What is the capability of an iPhone 5? I know they improved the camera aspect of the device. Can it zoom? Does anyone know?
No.
Yeah? It can? Is it an optical zoom or a digital zoom?
Digital.
Okay, so iPhone 5 can zoom, but it's still only digital. Digital zoom doesn't really work that well. It's really just bumping up the size of the pixels, but in a slightly more intelligent way. Well, smartphones are really nice, and the funny thing is I have seen people using tablets to take pictures. Yep, yep. You can see people with a big tablet, using it as a camera. My wife went to China for a trip, and when she was taking pictures with a point and shoot camera, some of the other people of the same tour, they were using iPads to take pictures, and that's really funny looking. Having a kind of like a book in front of you taking pictures
They
like
take
that.
good pictures though.
They do.
Yeah, really good pictures.
Well, and also the viewfinder is huge
Yeah,
too.
and it does video too and everything.
Yep.
So
Kind of expensive too.
I didn't pay for it.
How much is an iPad 3?
That's
$600.
6 to 8.
If image quality is top, importance to me, I would go for a single lens reflex camera. But the tablet obviously has other uses too,
Yeah.
so that's a good use of a device that you have already and use it to take pictures also.
Yeah, I don't bring it with me if I was going to go on a trip though.
It's easy to carry in a way because it's thin, but it's kind of big
Yeah.
in terms of the area.
Yeah, I just use a camera.
Yep.
It's kind of ridiculous.
It's Apple products tend to have fairly good results. Does it have a zoom, optical zoom, or does it still have a fixed focal length?
I think it has an optical zoom.
Okay, let's look
I'm
let's
not
look that
sure.
up. iPad 3 camera, and we'll go take a look. Specs, and we'll look for. No, go away. Okay, so the camera has an aperture of f2.4. That's a really good aperture. The maximum aperture is respectable. Has a resolution of 5 megapixels, which is good enough for prints up to, I would say up to maybe 11 by 14 would still be okay, but I wouldn't do poster size prints from 5 megapixels. Has autofocus, touch to focus, face recognition. Has digital image stabilization, which is not as good as optical image stabilization. And it doesn't say anything about zoom, so let me look for the word zoom instead. Yeah, it doesn't have any zoom capability, which is not surprising because the ability to zoom, means the camera, the lens assembly itself has to be bigger and also thicker. So that will make the overall device, the iPad 3, a lot bigger than it is now. And that's why it doesn't have the zoom capability. All right, so that's good. So many, not all, because I know some cell phones actually have the ability to zoom, but not a whole lot. It doesn't have a whole lot of exposure control. It's all software. So technically speaking, they should be able to let you do all the controls, but the software may not give you that option. And it's good for casual and also emergency kind of thing. Like if you get into an accident of any kind, you can use a cell phone as a camera to record, the license plate and whatnot. I use my cell phone, as a scanner. Okay, remember in the good old days we have those flatbed, scanners to scan like prints and whatnot. I use my cell phone for that purpose because at 5 megapixels, it's really quite good, in terms of looking at the output of the camera. And we can compare some of these resolutions too. If you look at a piece of paper, let's say this is a US letter size paper. It's 8.5 in one dimension and then 11 on the other one. And let's say you want to use your 150 dots per inch as a scanning resolution. So in this dimension, you have about 1200, and in this dimension, you have about 1600. And this is about 2 megapixels. So if you have a 5 megapixel camera, it has a better resolution taking a picture of a piece of paper than a scanner or a fax machine scanning it at 150 dpi. So that really tells you a lot about the capabilities of your cell phone's camera. It's really quite good. It just needs a lot more light. Okay, if you want to take a good picture of, if you want to make a photocopy of something, this mechanism needs a little bit more light because a scanner has its own light, so it doesn't need any external light lighting up the paper. So the trend that I'm seeing right now, that I think I'm seeing, is smartphones will continue to get better cameras. It's just technology. I mean, there's no turning back. Okay, your cell phones will continue to have better and better cameras. So it's going to push the envelope of the point and shoot camera, because at one point, if your cell phone has a camera that can do as well as a point and shoot camera, would you buy a point and shoot camera? There's no need to carry a second device. It's not really just the cost, but also the cumbersome, thing of, okay, now I have two devices. I have my phone and then I have my camera. If you only have to carry one, why do you want to carry two? On the other hand, digital single lens reflex cameras, I think, will continue to have its own market share, because the professionals will not trade it for anything else. Okay, professionals like the people who take take pictures at NFL games, or she's not here. The Giant games, okay, baseball. Oh no, you're back there. Okay, the Giant games, you want those people will not switch their camera system. There's no way they're going to switch anytime soon. So digital single lens reflex cameras will continue to have its own market, because they're really at the top end of performance. And also because of the availability of interchangeable lenses. Now, if you just want to understand what I mean by lots of interchangeable lenses, the best way to do it, to do your research. I'm not endorsing any companies here, but to do your research, you can just go to eBay and then type Canon EF lens, and there you have it. You can see what type or how many lenses are available, both new and used. In fact, you can just look at used too, and there's still a whole lot. And they are considerably less expensive compared to new. But then on eBay, you always take a certain risk when you buy something. So it depends on how willing you are to take risks, buying something from eBay. I have bought a lot of stuff from eBay, and luckily, fortunately, I do my research, and so far, have not been ripped off, except for really cheap stuff. Once I bought a light meter, I think it was $7.50 shipped, and it didn't work when I got it. But the expensive stuff that I got, they, for the most part, it worked just fine. Okay. And then the other trend has to do with camcorders. Camcorders, I think, will see a declining market, because they're also squished on both ends. Because we have point and shoot cameras having better capabilities to record video, and also digital single lens reflex cameras are also doing the same thing. So camcorders are getting squished on both ends too. Why do you want to have two devices when one can do the job? That's basically the bottom line. So except for people who really need to record video using only one hand, there's no advantage that I can see that these camcorders are offering. I think the whole concept of a camcorder is more traditional than anything else. It's just that we are used to having a camcorder to record video, but not really for much technical reason anymore. Are there any questions? I got a question. I got a really old camcorder, and I have a lot of tapes that were recorded using that camcorder on 8 millimeter. What am I going to do if I want to use some of that material for the project of this class? I think that's a legitimate question, right? How many people have some video footage on one of those older tape formats? Okay, I'm surprised, not a whole lot of people. You can go for professional conversions. You can send a tape in and have somebody else to do the conversion for you. You can also use the output of your camcorder, go through a digitizer, and then record everything back into digital format. You can go to Fry's and get one of those devices. I think one is called WinTV, the brand? Okay, I'll just go ahead and look for that. I think it's called WinTV. It's, yep. So let me go to their products. Yep, go ahead.
Now that I thought of it, do smartphones have aperture?
Smartphones do, You have to look at the setting. I cannot see mine, but you have to read the specifications. They usually do have fairly good wide aperture, but the sensor itself is small, so it still has limited low light sensitivity because of that. You can look it up. What phone do you have? Is that a Blaze?
Mobile.
Huh?
Boost Mobile.
What is the brand?
That's the company that you have the cell phone service with. What's the brand of the phone itself?
I can take a quick look if I can. It's a Samsung. It's probably one of the Galaxies. I don't know which Galaxy.
Oh,
Okay. I can look up mine. I have a Blaze. So you can just look up, Samsung Blaze camera, and look for. It's a 5 megapixel camera. Okay. And I just look for camera. Sometimes they don't release the specifications because it's not one of the most important features of a phone. Yeah, it doesn't have any aperture. If I look for the word aperture, it's not there. I can add it to my search words and see if it can locate anything. Right there, aperture size. Very good. It even comes with an explanation. Okay. So looking at aperture size is f2 for the HTC One, and then the Blaze doesn't have any rating. So you can see it's empty here. Doesn't have any rating. But it's actually not too bad. I mean, I can tell you it's not too bad at all. In fact, I can show you. This is another thing I want to show you guys. I know it's a little bit ahead of time, but I can show you this too. The question is, how do I get stuff out of my phone so that I can use it for the class? Okay, because it's easy to take pictures, but the question is, So I'm going to show you that exactly how to do it now. So I'm going to take a picture of this class. The wide angle of the phone is not really that wide, so it's okay, but not nearly as good as a real camera, because I can only if I look at this side here, I can go from this line and only cover this much. A real wide angle would be able to cover a lot more area. So I'm just going to take a picture. And by the way, that sound is completely artificial, which means you can turn it off entirely so that your phone can remain completely silent when you take pictures. Remember to do that in a wedding, because you're. Okay, so what you want to do is you can go to the gallery. If you have an Android phone, you can go to the gallery and take a look at the pictures that you have taken. Okay, so I just look at the picture that I have just taken. And it has a little button at the bottom that's labeled Share. So under Share, depending on how you configure your phone, you can have many different options of sharing the picture. If you do not have any other accounts set up, if you have an Android phone, you have a Google account already, so you can use Picasa. But the other way to do it, real easy, is to use Gmail or any other types of email account. So I'm going to use mine with Gmail, so it will send it as an attachment to whatever account I want to send it to. So I'm going to use my Gmail and send it to my school account. So I'm going to type it up here. nt@arc, and off it goes. So this way is really good for sending like 1 or 2 pictures that you have taken to either somebody else or yourself. Because do you know how to download an attachment from a email, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
If you know how to do it, then you have everything set. So now I have to go to my email account, my school email account, because that's where I sent it. Log in. Oops. And go to the bottom here. I just got my own message, and here's my picture. So I just have to right click, save link as, go to a whatever folder. I'm just going to put it into a temporary folder because I don't really need it. It's just for demonstration. Click the picture, and it's now on my computer. And it's using the wrong thing to open it up. Okay, that's all right. And this is also this is also a good opportunity to show you photo editing software, right? So I can go to, there's a program called the GIMP, GIMP, which is the abbreviation of GNU Image Manipulation Program. We'll talk about this in more details. Okay, I just want to show you what you can do with it. And in here, I would go to File, Open, go to the folder, which is the temp folder, open it up, and here we got the picture. It's on this computer now. So I can look at this picture, I can go to all the different tools. This is the magnification. So this is a 1 pixel for a pixel. You can see it's not too bad. Okay, you can see some noise effect here. You can see the you guys probably cannot see as much as I can, but I can see quite a bit of noise, especially where color is supposed to be uniform. You can actually see the speckles and stuff like that. And this is a good place to show you all the different filters and also what you can do with the GIMP. With the GIMP, you can go to let's say hue saturation, and then what you can do here is to change let's say the brightness or the lightness. In other words, you can make it lighter or just make it normal. You can also change the color saturation, make it more quote unquote vivid, or make it more subdued, or you can turn it completely into black and white. Yeah, once you get into the GIMP, there's really no stopping, because you can also go to Enhance. You can use an unsharp mask to improve the sharpness. Okay, so you can actually see how it becomes a little bit sharper. Did you guys see how it changed? No? Okay, let me apply the filter first. Okay, this is after applying the filter, and this is before. Can you see the difference before and after? So that's one thing you can do. You can also go for all kinds of interesting things. I can go to colors. One of the things that I really like about the GIMP is the level control and also the curve. We'll go to the level control first. It gives you a dial like this, and what you can do is to change the dark point, so you can change what is considered black. You can also change the white point to basically control what is considered white. So you can change the color distribution, or the lightness, brightness distribution. This part here is called the alpha channel, not the alpha. This is called the gamma channel. And by changing the gamma, you're changing how contrasty the picture is. So there's a lot of control you can do with the GIMP. And the GIMP is free. It's an open source program, so it's all free. You don't have to pay anything to download it and install it on your computer. We'll talk about it as soon as we are done with these topics. So we are done with camcorders. We'll go back to the main course. Okay, let's just go through this part here, because I think we will have to deal with this very soon because of your projects. Where are you going to store your multimedia content? Right now, I'll bet about 90% of the class has everything stored in an internal hard drive. Am I correct about it? Yep, okay, which is good. Okay, it's a very good place to start, because the internal hard drive is convenient. It's always on the computer. You don't have to attach something to your computer. And it typically has good capacity depending on the age of your computer. It typically has, these days, most desktop computers come with 2 or 3 terabyte of hard drive space, which is a lot of space, okay? But it also has a downside. It's not very portable unless it's on a notebook computer. For editing and processing, an internal hard drive also gives you excellent speed and efficiency. In other words, it's pretty much as fast as it can get, okay? When you load up a picture or video clip, an internal hard drive will give you the best performance. But the performance edge of an internal hard drive is less significant, because when you buy an external hard drive, they usually either use external SATA, external serial ATA. The jargon is not important to us. The bottom line is it will work. Your external hard drive can work as quickly as your internal hard drive. Because in the good old days, the external hard drives are very slow. Okay, if you try to process video content from an external hard drive, it would take eons before you can load up the picture and resave your projects. But these days, that's not true anymore. If your computer has external SATA or USB 3.0 as an interface, you can consider an external hard drive for everything. So we move on to external hard drives. Does everybody understand what is an external hard drive? Yep, okay.
Flash drive.
Flash drives are not as suitable because flash drives tend to be very slow. Not really. It depends on the brand, depends on which one you have. But the capacity, what is your capacity?
I have 4 GB.
4 gigabytes. But for video content, 4 gigabytes is not enough. Okay, it depends on how you want to. Depends on the encoding, and also depends on what kind of processing you want to do. But for
I just use mine for files and working at school.
yep,
At school.
for that purpose, it's fine. But if you want to edit video content, 4 gigabytes is not even close to enough. So you got to have an external hard drive for video content. Yes.
I have one at home. It's a T2.
T2. 2 terabyte, 2T.
2T, whatever.
Yeah, 2 terabyte is a lot of space, so that's a good size. But it's probably not very portable. In other words, you cannot just carry it with you. In fact, I have one with me, so I can show you guys what it looks like. This is it. Okay, I bought this from Costco for 60 or 80 bucks or something like that. This one comes with 1 terabyte of hard drive space, which is quite a lot. Okay, even for video editing and processing, that's quite a bit of space. And it has USB 3.0 as an interface. So if my computer has USB 3.0, the interface is no longer the bottleneck. The drive itself becomes the bottleneck, which means it is working as quickly as an internal hard drive. Yep.
I have a question because I have Dish Network, and you were supposed to be able to save your programs onto an external hard drive. So we bought one, but it didn't work. So in talking to them, they said that it has to be self-powered, so it has its own power
Right.
source.
Self-powered means it's powered by the USB port, so it doesn't have an external jack to power up.
But they're saying that it needs to be where you can plug it in to be powered.
Oh,
Because the box
okay,
doesn't
I understand
provide
now.
power
Okay.
to it. And I didn't know that they had. I mean, I always saw them, you just plug them into your laptop and
Right.
they transfer over.
These are the really small and portable ones. So what you are looking for is the quote-unquote desktop version of external hard drives. So they come with 2 plugs on the back, one for power and one for USB. So in that case, the USB is not used to power up the device, and just for data transfer. And the desktop versions are usually bigger, have more capacity for the same money, but they don't have the same size, which is really nice. This one is really small. You can put it in your pocket. But the desktop versions, because it's usually bigger and it has an adapter, it's not really designed for portability.
I guess what was confusing me is the part that they needed power, because I used to see, so that it's drawing power from when you use it on a laptop. That's how it's,
This one will draw power from the USB connection,
okay.
because USB is designed to power up devices. But the DirecTV box or whatever your cable box is probably does not give up enough juice to power up something like this.
Okay.
And that's why they want the device itself to have its own power jack, so it doesn't need power from USB itself to run it.
Yeah, now we have one that's that size.
Yep. Yeah, these things are great. They're fast. They're not too expensive, and the only downside is you can lose them pretty easily because they're so small.
We use it as a backup for all of our pictures.
Yep, you can use it as a backup. In fact, we're getting there really really soon. What about the cloud? Well, the cloud is not quite ready for video content because depending on there are 3 aspects you have to kind of pay attention to. One is your network speed. The network speed of one of the better internet connection is 20 megabits per second. Sounds like a lot. Your web browsing experience is really good. You can watch YouTube and stuff like that just fine, but it is really small or really slow compared to 3 gigabits per second of your hard drive. So that means when you want to download your entire video content from the network, it's not a viable option. The second part has to do with your ISP, particularly Comcast and AT&T, may put a cap and say that for every month you can only transfer up to 10, 20 gigabytes. So if you exceed that amount, your internet connection speed will drop to like all the way to the bottom. You can barely browse anything. So it's not really usable because of that also. And then the third reason you have to consider is when your content is in the cloud, you may not have a whole lot of privacy. In other words, other people may be able to get to your content. Employees of the ISP, of whatever company is hosting the cloud-based service, probably has access to your video content. So it depends on whether you value that privacy or not. Okay, the last point here is how do you back up your content? In other words, for many of us, if all your pictures, everything that you have taken for the past 10, 15 years is on your internal hard drive, what happens when your hard drive fails? That's the question. And don't think it won't happen. Do not think the hard drive will not fail, because I used to own a Dell laptop computer that has a habit of killing one hard drive per year. I had replaced 3 hard drives over 3 years with that one computer, and then finally I just gave up. The computer was fine, but I just gave up because I didn't want to change my hard drive every year. So don't think that your hard drive will not fail, because it will fail. It is only a matter of time. The question is your content, your pictures, your videos, and everything that is valuable to you, is it backed up anywhere else? That's the question. Does anyone back up your content? Okay, you do? Very good. So the best way to back up, once again, is an external hard drive, because it is small, it is relatively inexpensive, and it has good capacity. A flash card doesn't have the capacity nor the speed, but this one does. So as the last part of this class, I know we are running out of time, we'll just go to Costco one more time. Where's Costco? Just pop in another box. And we'll take a look at these external hard drives and see how much you have to pay for what kind of capacity. So you go to electronics.
So the difference between internal and external hard drives is that the internal hard drives are inside a personal computer, and the external are like flash drives and SD cards.
External means it's easy for you to carry. It's just this, and the cable. Okay, you just need the cable and the hard drive. Then you can use the content on any computer. So it's really, really handy, because now you don't have to work on your content on a particular computer. You can take the content with you and use it somewhere else. This is basically just a sample list of all the stuff that is available. You can see some of these are kind of expensive, but they're expensive for a reason. Like this one is 200 something, but it's called disaster proof, which means if your house, well, let's not say your house, but if a house is on fire, this thing can withstand up to 1550 degrees Fahrenheit for half an hour, and still preserve the content on the hard drive. Or it can be underwater for up to 10 feet for 3 days, and water would not get in to destroy the content. So if you want to make sure that your content can survive natural disasters, this is and the enclosure makes sure that happens. But if you really just want the capacity, we can just go for the lowest price ones, like this one here, 500 megabytes for $80, which is not a very good deal. And let's see, are there any better deals?
Costco's only good when their stuff is on sale. You don't go and buy their full price stuff. You wait for sales.
Sometimes they have these coupon books, and when they're on sale, they're pretty good.
They are good.
Yeah, you can get pay $80 and get 1.5 terabytes or so. All right, so we are running out of time. I will give you your homework assignment to do some research. Do you guys have any preferences? Do you have any particular thing that you are looking for anyway, so you can just make that your homework assignment? Or do you want me to tell you, you have to do research to buy this?
Well, I already know I'm in the market for a camera, so.
So you can just use that. Does anyone, okay, let me rephrase the question. How many people do not have any idea or is not in the market to buy anything, so I can give you a suggestion? Okay, so the majority of the class, probably need me to kind of give you a few choices. I'm not going to say, you have to do research on this one. I'll give you a few choices and then you can give me your research, okay? So I'll do that, make it available on Moodle, and I'll see you guys on Monday. Happy Halloween, and don't eat too much candy. Have to say that part.